Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. I'm Jitesh Vital, Program Director for Data Science and Technology at Medical Device Innovation Consortium, MDIC. And I'm incredibly thankful to the speakers today to highlight one of these important cybersecurity initiatives. And I'm also equally proud that this is happening during the October Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Before we jump into the actual discussion on cybersecurity, since some of you may be very new to the MDIC platform, I would briefly give an overview of MDIC. MDIC is a non-profit public-private partnership. We have members, industry, specifically medical device and diagnostic industry members. And then we have government stakeholders, specifically FDA, CMS, and NIH. And then we also have a lot of nonprofit organization, which represents patients, providers, and academics. And the main objective or sole objective of MDIC is to work in the pre-competitive space collaboratively to advance the regulatory science of medical device and diagnostics for ensuring the patients in need can get the benefit of innovation in our field. MDIC came into existence in 2012. I can say that this was a brainchild of Jeff Shuren, who is the current director of CDRH. He with his ongoing, with his discussion at that time with Medical Device Ally, during a cab ride, actually came up with this concept of a public-private partnership to advance regulatory science, aligned with the industry, aligned with the development, a lot of developments in this particular field or innovation in this field happening, and to harness the full power of the changes in the field, aligned with the FDA and industry priorities. I just want to mention or highlight the fact that MDIC, we work collaboratively with industry, FDA, and other stakeholders in device sector, but we do not work on advocacy or policy aspects. Just to give an organization structure, we have 4 core areas. One is clinical science, under which we have early feasibility studies, clinical diagnostics, and science of patient input as projects. And then I lead data science and technology. Under that, we have computational modeling and simulation, digital health areas, 5G, and of course, cybersecurity that we are going to discuss today in great detail. We also have a division on health economics and patient access, as well as NESCC, which is the center exclusively dedicated for harnessing the power of real-world data and real-world evidence in pre-market and post-market setting. So there are a lot of initiatives that the medical device and diagnostic stakeholders can get involved at MDIC. As I mentioned, it's a public-private partnership. We work with the stakeholders across the spectrum. So to learn more about the different opportunities to collaborate with us on various initiatives over and beyond cybersecurity initiatives, please do visit our website. There are a lot of resources and tools available on regulatory science on our website. You can email me as well for additional information. With that, I wanted to turn it over to our speakers today. We have Jessica Wilkerson, Greg Garcia, Chris Tyberg, and Tyrone Heggins to lead the discussion on the Cybersecurity Maturity Benchmarking Initiative. The speakers will be available to answer your questions. So please do utilize the Zoom Q&A window so that the speakers can look at the questions and have an interaction with the audience after their prepared presentation or prepared remarks. With that, I turn it over to Jessica Wilkerson from FDA.
Thanks so much. Really honored to be able to speak to everyone here today. Looking forward to one day being able to speak with everyone in person at some unidentifiable point in the future. But to get started on today's topic, everyone here listening to these remarks today knows that as medical devices in the healthcare sector have become increasingly integrated with and dependent upon connected technologies, the criticality of cybersecurity has grown in parallel. And it's in recognition of this fact that in recent years, FDA co-chaired a task group within the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council to develop best practices for developing cybersecure medical devices. That work culminated in the Joint Security Plan, released in 2019 and endorsed by FDA and the private sector. Since its release, the JSP has continued to gain adoption. The JSP's release was only the first step, however. Additional work is required to not only track adoption of best practices like the JSP, but to track the effectiveness of such practices over time. And that's what we're here to talk today about. The MDIC benchmarking initiative represents just such an opportunity. By developing methodologies for measuring, for benchmarking what exactly good cybersecurity is, the sector will be able to measure what it looks like, how it changes over time, and how the industry is meeting the cybersecurity challenges that it faces. We're going to be able to see where we are succeeding, where we might need to focus additional efforts and resources, and in doing so, continuously improve in our ability to provide the safest and most effective care possible. We are looking forward to seeing how the project progresses and how it can help continue moving the sector towards ever greater cybersecurity capabilities and maturity. And for those of you who have seen me speak before, it was probably incredibly obvious that I was doing that off of talking points. For one thing, I wasn't speaking about 3,000 miles an hour. Everything that I just said, of course, is completely true, but I did want to take a moment to speak more off the cuff about this, this project, the work that MDIC is doing, the work that the steering committee and Tyrone and Chris have put into it. Because, you know, the pandemic, I think, has really shown just how critical all of our systems are. You know, the fact that we're able to have this conversation today remotely with all of us sitting in our homes, that all of the work that we've all been working on over the past couple of months has continued almost uninterrupted, is just, you know, it really underscores exactly what we're here to talk about. And in the healthcare context, this takes on a completely new dimension, right? Because in addition to needing to be able to send emails, to answer phone calls, to make sure that a given business continues or that the government can continue to function, the healthcare sector is required to make sure that patients can continue to get care in the middle of all of this. And that's no simple task. It's especially no simple task when we look at and really examine the cybersecurity threats that we all face today. You know, I don't even have to start listing them off, just Google it. You know, the healthcare sector has been targeted in a way that I don't necessarily know that we would have anticipated. It's certainly not something that we like, but it's a reality of what we're dealing with, is that the healthcare sector and cybersecurity are critically important. They're critically intertwined. And as Suzanne Schwartz, my boss, and who many of you are probably familiar with, is very quick to point out and very quick to remind everyone, cybersecurity is patient safety. If you do not have cybersecurity built into your medical devices that are being put on the market today, you don't have a safe product. And so it's very important that I think that, you know, these kinds of projects, the benchmarking project, really helps us make progress from, you know, this binary discussion of cybersecurity, do we have it or do we not, to how good of cybersecurity do we have? Because we need to be continuously getting better. For the sake of better patient care, for the sake of the healthcare sector, we have to be constantly improving. And we can do that without being able to measure it, without being able to benchmark it. But we're going to do it a whole lot better if we have those metrics, because it's going to give us something to look at. It's going to give us something to evaluate. It's going to help us target the areas for improvement and make sure that we're putting resources where they need to be. And so again, thank you for listening to my prepared talking points, as I sounded a little bit robotic, I'm sure, and then to giving me the opportunity to just sort of expand upon them here. But again, you know, this is an incredibly important work. This is an incredibly important opportunity. I'm very honored to be a part of it, and on FDA's behalf. I'm working with some incredibly great people who you're going to hear from today. I'm just really looking forward to seeing where all this goes. So anyway, I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn this over to Greg Garcia, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about what his organization is doing. Thanks all.
All right, thank you, Jessica. And thanks to MDIC for hosting this. MDIC is a member of the Sector Coordinating Council, which I'll describe to you to give you a little bit of background, some fundamentals about the collaborative process that led to the Joint Security Plan that Jessica alluded to. If we just go to the introductory slide, and the Sector Coordinating Council is one of 16 sector coordinating councils that are associated with critical infrastructure. We are a critical infrastructure just as the electric sector is, telecommunications, financial services, water, transportation, many more, all designated under presidential executive order that sets up a public-private partnership that essentially mandates from the White House to the federal agencies that the agencies need to be working with these critical industry sectors to identify all hazards, all threats and vulnerabilities facing a sector's ability to deliver those critical assets and services that the public depends upon. So this slide shows you what the basic definition is that we go by for what is critical infrastructure. And it really is, what is it that the public cannot do without? And that if there is any substantial disruption of a critical infrastructure or a subset of a critical infrastructure, it would have cascading impact across the sector, across the economy, across public health and safety, economic security, national security. Next slide, please. And so if you look at the healthcare sector, these are the components, the subsectors of healthcare that make up what is our critical infrastructure. And our critical infrastructure ultimately, of course, dedicated to public health and well-being, patient safety. So the Sector Coordinating Council that is set up under this public-private partnership is made up of the major representatives, the major subsectors of the healthcare sector, and very much some of the largest and most influential players from whether it's direct patient care, medical materials or medical device manufacturers, health IT, plans and payers, pharmaceutical labs and blood. They all together make up the Sector Coordinating Council, and includes organizations that are in public health and research, such as MDIC, and a lot of the industry associations that serve those specific subsectors. Next slide. So, what is the Sector Coordinating Council? I'm sorry, excuse me, I'll just go back one. The agenda for the Health Sector Coordinating Council is really laid out for us, at least on the cybersecurity side, by a seminal task force that was assembled by Health and Human Services at the direction of the Congress back in 2015. And in 2017, this task force, the Healthcare Industry Cybersecurity Task Force, they were tasked with assessing healthcare cybersecurity, what's going on where we have become such a big, juicy target and are unprepared for it. What should we be doing about it? This task force, made up of about 24 healthcare and cybersecurity experts across industry and government, came up with these 6 imperatives and 105 action items. It is a to-do list for us that we took. I'm sorry, I was on a different slide. Could we go forward one? Okay, there, that's the one I was speaking from. They laid out these action items that we took as the Cybersecurity Working Group to establish a whole series of task groups, very specific outcome-oriented task groups dedicated to trying to address these 6 major imperatives. And what we're talking about today, medical device security, as you can see, is imperative number 2. And it was out of that recommendation that the task group was formed on medical device security, which ultimately resulted in the Joint Security Plan for Medical Device and Health IT Security that was released in January of last year. Many of these other imperatives we have addressed through other task groups related to workforce development, better information sharing, intellectual property protection, supply chain security. So we have, as a group, now about 300 organizational members and about 600 people representing those organizations, which include our government partners, and also a number of advisor companies, consultants, security firms. Together, we have developed a pretty good profile of cybersecurity best practices across the spectrum that we hope to see implemented across the sector. And this benchmarking initiative is a key to that. You know, we've always said that you cannot improve what you cannot measure. So let's go to the next slide, please. Here are the task groups that I was talking about. So this puts in context all of the different activities taking place in the Sector Coordinating Council that constitute this public-private partnership. And you can see the green box in the middle started with the JSP at the top. And since that time, we have added subgroups devoted to dealing in more detail with some high-level concepts like legacy medical device security, like model contract language between hospital systems and the device makers, and also vulnerability communications, how we communicate vulnerabilities out to our stakeholder partners in the community, including patients. So taken together, these really constitute the agenda of the sector. And we work very closely with the FDA, with Health and Human Services, with the Department of Homeland Security in this partnership. Next slide, please. And here's a list of the publications that we have produced so far. You can see the Medical Device and Health IT Joint Security Plan, second from the bottom. Most recent publication in just last month on improving supply chain security, cybersecurity, risk management. So all of these, over time, we're going to want to assess the level of penetration across the sector, particularly in the smaller to mid-sized organizations that don't necessarily have the expertise or the resources to pay really close attention to cybersecurity, but they know they need a place to start. And this is going to get them started. And over time, we're going to want to find ways to measure that penetration, just like this benchmarking initiative is designed to do. Next slide, please. And that will take us to the end. So let me just reiterate that we have come together over the past 3 years with the Sector Coordinating Council, understanding that we have been behind the curve, behind the power curve, that we have been a target and a vulnerable target to cyber criminals, to nation states, and that we have some catching up to do. So the best way to do that is a collaborative exercise, is a collaborative process that brings together the major stakeholders with the recognition that none of us individually is as smart as all of us collectively, and that if we are working closer together, it's like a neighborhood watch in a sense, and that collectively, if we are sharing our best practices, if we are sharing information about how we can be doing this better, we're going to be collectively stronger. That's really the basis for the Joint Security Plan, which you will hear more about. Essentially, this is a design for how you build security into medical devices from the ground up, and deal with those devices over the life of their service in a clinical environment. This is what we're focused on. This is our MO, and I'd like to turn it over now to to Chris Tyberg and to Tyrone, who are going to walk you through in more detail what this actually means in terms of how we measure it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. This is Chris Tyberg with Abbott. Hope everybody's doing well today. Thanks for taking time to meet with us. I looked through the attendee list and see a lot of familiar names. This is the time of year when it's previously would be getting used to kind of doing all the fall conferences, HISAC and HSCC next week and AdvaMed. And unfortunately, as everybody knows, a little different year this year. So looking forward to eventually seeing many of you again in person. And for those that I haven't met, look forward to meet you for the first time. Jessica did a great job of explaining and kind of talking through the benefits of this effort and how it'll help the industry as a whole. I wanted to add one thing, a little bit more of a selfish reason why I think this is important. For those of you out there that have or are involved with building or developing medical device security programs, you'll know that, and especially now as we're getting into the year-end processes and the planning processes for next year, at least in my experience, it's quite common to be asked the question of, well, how do we compare to others, or where are we at compared to a target? And unlike many other areas, even in security, enterprise security, there's lots of benchmarks out there and things that can be used to benchmark ourselves, and different firms out that will help do that. In the product and medical device security space, those things aren't as readily available. And so that's why I think this is such a great opportunity. Like JSP, starting from nothing and building it up, and through HSCC putting that out, like Greg mentioned, getting involved with this benchmarking effort is a great opportunity for us to build something from the ground up that's really going to help improve the industry, but also something that we within each of our organizations can use to help educate our leadership and others within our organization around where we're at and where we need to go. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tyrone and let him lead us through the next section.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyrone Heggins. I am the Cybersecurity Officer for the Americas at BD. And if you aren't familiar with BD, BD is a leading medical technology company that offers some of the most advanced products across the healthcare continuum. And I'll just keep it short and brief and dive right in. If you can advance to the next slide, Zafar or Jitesh. So whether you represent a medical technology company or a healthcare delivery organization, the fact remains that we all share the same common goals. And those are protecting patient safety and privacy, increasing cyber resilience, and accelerating cybersecurity maturity across the industry. So as far as goals, that's just setting the foundation for what we're aiming for. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so over the past couple of years, a lot of work has gone into the Joint Security Plan, and it's time to develop a benchmark for cybersecurity maturity. And because of the Joint Security Plan, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's sort of a roadmap that already exists. The JSP maturity model metrics, which include organizational structure and governance, risk management, design control, and complaint handling. And what we're looking to do as a cybersecurity working group is to use the capability maturity model, the CMMI index, to incorporate best practices for how we measure cybersecurity maturity. So we're looking to develop a tool that would help organizations assess their cybersecurity maturity in relation to industry benchmarks, and also help us as an industry to accelerate cybersecurity maturity, essentially. And so if you go to the next slide, you guys are probably wondering what that looks like, and that's a great question. So here's what we envision the process looking like. you would measure your maturity, and then it would get aggregated anonymously and shared. Then you would develop an improvement plan, implement those improvement plans, track your process, and then rinse, wash, and repeat. And in order to use this, you don't need to be an organization that has already leveraged the Joint Security Plan. There's a bunch of different ways to measure maturity, but what we tried to do was create a lightweight way for everyone to participate. And the lift to do something like this isn't that heavy of a lift as well. And so if you're wondering how you get involved, can you go to the next slide, please? There's 3 ways you can get involved, right? You can help us to develop the benchmarking tool. You can use the tool, or you can anonymously contribute to your organization's metrics. So as a group, we're looking for volunteers to help us develop the tool. But once we have the tool in place, we're looking for organizations who'll be willing to use it. And hopefully we can get enough participation to generate a useful benchmark. And so if you are interested in participating, can you go to the next slide, please? You can contact Jitesh, who's the program director. And then as well, we're accepting RFPs. So can you go to the last slide? And so if the RFP was opened October 2nd, and it will be open until October 30th. And so if you want to be a participant, you contact Jitesh, or if you would like to be on the other side helping to develop the tool, you contact Jitesh. So we made it easy. If you go to the MDIC website, there's a portal for both getting involved and then also for how to join in the RFP process. And so that concludes what we have for you for today. And are there any questions, Jitesh?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions. The first question is, how does this benchmarking effort differs from the cybersecurity industry benchmarking activities like BSIM?
Right. So we did have a brief discussion about BSIM, and BSIM seemed like it took a more quantitative approach, while the JSP gives you quantitative outputs, but it's more qualitative in essence. And so it allows for more flexibility in participation. So if you're not an organization who currently leverages the JSP, it won't be a blocker in your participation. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that, I mean, with any security program, right, you don't necessarily measure yourself against one framework either. So I think that's part of which will be part of the output of this is getting a good set of metrics and measures based on JSP, but those can then also easily be mapped back and tied to other things. And we've heard from people that, you know, people aren't using JSP out of the box, or they've made modifications to it for their organizations that fit with their organizations, and that's understandable. That's you know, that's pretty common. And so I think what this will give us to some common metrics and measures that we can then use, and then also use to tie those back to other frameworks that are out there.
Thanks, Chris. The next question is, how long the measurement program will run?
So we talked about having something to share next year at the MDIC annual forum, but we didn't want this to be a one-time thing. We were hoping that this would be a new demonstrated best practice that we would iterate on annually.
Chris and Tyrone, do you also want to elaborate? Are there any restrictions in enrolling the pilot, I mean, I want to clarify like whether MDIC membership is not required and so on, or other commitment. Do you want to briefly highlight that?
Say that again, please, Jitesh.
To enroll in the pilot study as a manufacturer, you don't need to be an MDIC member.
Correct.
And also there are no fee or payment or anything to be provided to MDIC and so on. Are there any other criteria, any other prerequisite?
No, just a willingness to participate and be great together.
Okay. All right, thanks. Next question. How would you envision or recommend for an university to involve in this initiative? I mean, they're asking academic or university SMEs whether they can be involved in somehow.
So when we initially discussed the scope of this project, it was for device manufacturers and healthcare delivery organizations. We really didn't talk about the academic organizations participating. So we would have to take that back to the MDIC steering committee, and perhaps we could include that in the scope for a later iteration. But for the pilot, I believe we wanted to limit it to MDMs and HDOs, healthcare delivery organizations and device manufacturers.
And then there is a specific question about the RFP process itself. It's a little bit long. Let me try to read it out here. As we are all aware, the JSP, Joint Security Plan, as a part of the assessment process, asks some questions that some medical device manufacturers might be apprehensive with divulging some of the information. With the plan and due to the requirement of a final report in the RFP, a good sample set will help with the report quality. Is there already a list of MDMs that have agreed to provide the information, or will the vendor be required to find medical device manufacturers that are willing to participate in the assessment?
So I'm going
Tyrone,
to
I can answer that one, or
yeah. So yeah, Chris, you can take that one.
yeah. Oh, I can start. If you have other thoughts, feel free to add. So a couple things with this. First of all, I think rightfully so pointing out, and Tyrone covered his slides, that this is going to be anonymous information. So as many of you have maybe participated in benchmarking efforts before, or seen benchmarks from Gardner or other firms, of course we don't share, they don't share who provided information to those benchmarks or company scores or anything like that. So it is anonymous, which is actually part of the reason why we decided to bring in a independent third party to help facilitate this, because we knew that, for example, it was Chris from Abbott calling, there may be certain information that people wouldn't be willing to share. So that was, part of the design of doing the RFP and looking to bring in some additional assistance. And then to the specific question here, the firm that signs up or was awarded the RFP, they don't have to go out and sign people up. We're looking to do that through MDIC, and so those firms will already be signed up ahead of time.
And just one other part of the question, they asked if there was a list of folks who are participating. We don't have a list of folks to share publicly yet, but we do have a few organizations who have expressed interest in participating. But also, I just want to reiterate the fact that all results will be aggregated and shared in aggregate form. So your organization's individual contribution won't be readily identifiable in the results or the output of the benchmark.
Thanks, Tyrone. I think that it is partially answers the next question, which is, are there any limits on participation, number of companies, size of the company, and geopolitical location?
No, we're looking for participation from anyone who's willing to participate.
There is one more question. It's more of logistics. are we going to make this presentation available after meeting? Yes, I can answer that. We will have the recording along with the slides available on MDIC website in the next couple of days. Okay, one more question here. Self-assessments have a tendency to skew positive or negative depending upon the person doing the self-assessment. Would it be better to have a third party perform these assessments, or to try to drive the consistency across the responses?
Chris, I'll pass that one to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, you could never completely eliminate, without having an audit performed or some independent assessment done, which we're not doing here, and actually going that far. But part of the objective of the RFP and getting a third party involved would be to bring a little bit of that third party objectivity to the discussion, to have them help kind of normalize and compare responses and things like that. So definitely, I think something that thinking about, and I wouldn't call it a complete self-assessment, but doesn't go as far as full-on review or audit or anything like that either. And then Jitesh, it looks like there was one question above that about, can participants share their own benchmark scores? I think the intent is that you get your own score that you can use to in your internal discussions. The one thing that as a group we discussed as the steering committee was going through and pulling this effort together, was one thing that we don't want is for companies to use this score from a competitive or a marketing perspective or anything like that. So the intent of this is not to people to get a score that they then would, put in their marketing materials or things like that and say, hey, we achieved a whatever score on the MDIC benchmark. The intent from an individual company's perspective is to really use this to measure themselves and develop those improvement plans and strategies like Tyrone talked about in his slides.
I think those are the questions which we already have here. And what I want to highlight is whether any of your manufacturers, if you would like to enroll or learn more about the benchmarking pilot study, you can contact us via this email address, cybersecurity@mdic.org. Even we are more than happy to provide more additional information. And the firms who are willing to help us to develop the tool, the RFP process is open. Again, you can submit the proposal using the button on our website. And again, we are happy to clarify if you have additional question. The RFP document is available online in the website. It highlights in more, explains in more detail. So happy to address more questions offline if necessary. With that, I want to thank our speakers, Jessica, Greg, Garcia, as well as Chris and Tyrone for taking their time for their busy schedule. And once again, I will make sure that the presentation is available on MDIC website in the next couple of days. So if you do have more questions, please do shoot us an email. We'll be happy to respond in due course. With that, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Take care, everyone.